After finishing as a top 8 fantasy wide receiver in his second season, DK Metcalf has steadily been declining as a fantasy asset. However, after a lackluster week 1, he's posted 2 top 12 wide receiver weeks, at least at the point of me recording this video, and he appears to be well on his way towards a massive fantasy season for us. How is it that he's performing at such a higher level now than he was previously? Well, we're going to take a look at his profile, take a look at his usage, his snap share, rush share, and target share, and then look on film in weeks 2 and 3 and see how he's being utilized to his strengths. DK Metcalf is 6'3", 228 pounds with 34-inch arms. He was selected in the second round of the 2019 NFL Draft, and he's 26 years and 7 months old. Historically, this should be the peak production season from DK Metcalf. Moving on to his athletic profile, he ran a 4.33 40-yard dash, which is 99th percentile in and of itself, but because he's 6'3", 228 pounds doing that, that gives him a 133.3 speed score, which is height and weight adjusted. That's 100th percentile. This guy is a superhuman athlete. When we look at his burst score, that's his vertical and broad jump score, his 135.9 is in the 97th percentile. All right, so he's elite in all 3 of these. Then we get to his agility score. His 11.88 is 4th percentile. What do these athletic numbers tell us about him as an athlete? Well, they tell us that he is a very good straight line athlete. If you remember my Quentin Johnston video from a couple days ago, he also, while he is nowhere near the athlete that DK Metcalf is, he also had a very good burst score and a decent speed score, but his agility score was also very poor. And so what did we find on film? Well, the Chargers were generally using him on 9 routes, on drag routes and screens, things that don't necessarily ask him to be the most agile athlete, but allow him to utilize his strengths. And so that is also how DK Metcalf is best used. When we look at his fantasy performances, in week 1 against Pat Surtain and the Denver Broncos, he finished with 5.9 full PPR points on an 88% snap count with 4 targets and 3 receptions for 29 receiving yards and no touchdowns. That was a very disappointing game if you were an owner. Then in week 2, he absolutely exploded. He finished with 28.9 full PPR points on an 87% snap count, so 1 less percentage there, but he had 14 targets, 10 receptions, 129 yards, and a touchdown. Then in week 3, he finished with 20.4 full PPR points on an 83% snap count, having 6 targets with 4 receptions, 104 yards, and 1 touchdown. His target share so far has been very hit or miss. We've seen 4, 14, and 6. If DK Metcalf is going to sustain this performance, he's going to need to receive more towards the 14 targets per game than the 4 or 6 that he's received in 2 of these 3 weeks. When we look at the Seahawks' leading receivers in week 3, DK Metcalf didn't finish with the most targets. He finished tied for second on the team with Noah Fant behind Tyler Lockett. He did, however, finish with the most receiving yards, and he also recorded the only receiving touchdown for the Seahawks. When we look at his snap share, in week 1, he had an 88%, that went down to 87% in week 2, and finally down to 83% in week 3. He didn't record a rush yet this season, so his rush shares are all 0%. When you take a look at his target shares through 3 weeks, in week 1, his target share was only 16%. Honestly, to be a wide receiver 2 in general, you need to be around 20%, so you're looking at a wide receiver 3 level target share in week 1. However, in week 2, he had a 32.56% target share. That's elite wide receiver 1 level. Then in week 3, he had an 18.18% target share, and that's back to wide receiver 3 level again. And so we are seeing a ton of variance on a week-to-week basis with DK Metcalf's targets. The first play we're going to look at, DK Metcalf is on the bottom of your screen. He's running a flat route. He notices that Geno Smith is in trouble, so he takes his route upfield. Now, Fuller is on him. He stands absolutely no chance. He also isn't looking at Geno Smith, so he doesn't know that the ball's coming. And so DK Metcalf absolutely mosses him and suns him, and it's a free completion. This is just one example of the physical dominance of DK Metcalf. On this next play, DK Metcalf is at the bottom of your screen. It's the ending play of the first quarter. He runs a double move where he fakes as though he's running a dig route, then turns it right on upfield. The cornerback bites, and yeah, it's a wrap. Once he gets behind you, you're not going to catch him. See, with some people, their 40-yard dash speed doesn't translate to the NFL field. His absolutely does. And once he gets behind you, it's an absolute wrap just about every single time. We all remember that chase down tackle he had on Buda Baker. That is, in general, how much faster he is, especially once he gets some build-up speed, than really anyone else on the field. On this play, DK Metcalf is lined up on the line of scrimmage at the bottom of your screen. He's running a drag route, and he finds himself initially open because the guy covering him gets caught in the line. He doesn't really end up getting anything out of it because there's a defender on the other side as well, and so they wrap him up for a minimal gain. Do you remember how I was comparing him earlier to Quentin Johnston in the sense of that they're both straight line athletes? Obviously, Quentin Johnston is nowhere near the athlete that DK Metcalf is, but they succeed in similar ways. If you remember my QJ video from a couple days ago, they were running 9 routes with him, running drag routes, and running screens. Well, in this video, they had DK Metcalf run a flat route, and while that isn't a screen per se, it's somewhat similar. Then they also having him run drag routes, just like with Quentin Johnston, and they also have him running vertical routes, just like with QJ. While they are very different in the sense of the spectrum of athlete in which they are at the NFL level, they are both similar in that they're all linear athletes. Here we have DK Metcalf lined up at the top of your screen. He's running a pick play masqueraded as a curl route. He obviously tries to get right in the way of the defender trying to get to Zach Charbonnet. I do think, though, that he was the first read the entire time, as Geno Smith had Zach Charbonnet wide open, but he still went to DK Metcalf, and he didn't even look off of Metcalf. Then, after DK Metcalf got the ball, he trucked through a couple people. He gained about 9 yards, but it was a very solid effort to try to get the first down. If you like what you're seeing so far, please like and subscribe. It's a free and easy way to support the channel. I love these player breakdown videos where we get to look at a player's profile, their metrics, their snap, rush, and target shares, and then break down what we see from them on film and what their strengths and weaknesses are. If you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe. On this next play from week 2, DK Metcalf is in the slot. He's running a vertical route here. Either Christian Gonzalez or the cornerback next to him messed up in coverage because DK Metcalf wasn't even guarded down the field. That was a free touchdown. This is an example of something that, in my opinion, that and the double move touchdown has boosted his total points through the first 2 weeks and kind of inflated his fantasy finishes, in my opinion. Obviously, he has to have the skill to even be able to pull off those plays, but you can't really rely on long touchdowns from busted coverages in general to give you a lot of your production. And so I do think that while he's a very talented player, I think these 2 plays from weeks 2 and 3 are a big reason for his fantasy finishes. I mean, obviously they accounted for a large portion of his points in each game. But where I'm going with this is, while he has the ability to do this in basically any given game because of how athletic he is, I do think it is a little bit misleading because 2 of these plays have happened in 2 consecutive games. Here we have another drag route. DK Metcalf is at the top of your screen. For some reason, the Patriots have a linebacker covering him. That's a terrible idea, and so he immediately gets open. He gets ahead of steam. Zach Charbonnet picks up a nice block for him. He rounds the corner. He gets about 12 yards here. It's a nice gain, and another example in this Ryan Grubb offense of him being used to his strengths. On this final play I'm going to show you, DK Metcalf is running another, you guessed it, drag route. It's 3rd and 27, so the Patriots are finalizing this completion. They come up and make the tackle. It is good to see that DK Metcalf is being used to his strengths. It's going to help maximize his output in this Ryan Grubb offense, and we're going to see a good amount of decent games for him this year. I would just be wary of expecting 20-point games regularly from him because at least the past 2 weeks, he's done so on the backs of long touchdowns. DK Metcalf is one of the most athletic wide receivers that we've ever seen. Remember that he has 100th percentile size-adjusted speed. He is, however, a linear athlete. We expect to see a lot of 9 routes, curl routes, and drag routes from him, as well as the occasional dig route, and that's how he's best utilized in this Ryan Grubb offense. While we have seen two 20-point games in a row, at least in a full PPR, I would caution people though that he's had two long touchdown gains in each of the past 2 weeks, which have inflated his numbers quite a bit actually. And so, while I think he's one of the most explosive wide receivers in the NFL and a great fantasy asset to own, I would caution people once again that expecting 20-point games on the regular probably isn't a good idea, although he's fully capable of producing even more than that on a weekly basis. And so, in summation, I think that he's a solid wide receiver 2 for us in fantasy that's going to have massive wide receiver 1 spike weeks, and he's a must start essentially every week because of the massive upside that he brings. I would just once again not expect 20-point games regularly. With that being said, if you like these player breakdowns, feel free to like and subscribe. It's a nice and easy way to support the channel. I love doing these, delving through player profiles, looking at their metrics, and breaking down what we see from them on film and how they're best utilized in their offenses. Thank you, and have a good day.